Hello. Normal hair monkey here. GM. I really wanted to talk about this because this weapon, the Atlatl, is incredibly underrated and I don't ever see mains using it, and it's typically an iron weapon. But I think across the board, it's an extremely good early ranged weapon. And I think it comes very, very close to Bofa for a fraction of the price. So we'll look into it. And I think the big reason that nobody knows about this thing is because it's so weird. This thing is very strange. Okay, so this is dropped at moons. You go to Perilous Moons, it's a drop from Eclipse. This is a 3-tick dart throwing weapon. It's kind of similar to a blowpipe. It's a little slower than a blowpipe, and you're throwing darts at things. It scales off of strength bonus and strength level, rather than ranged bonus, ranged damage, that kind of thing. The max hit is completely based off your strength, but that gives it a couple benefits in a lot of cases. The accuracy for this weapon comes from ranged bonus, and the damage comes from strength bonus. So things like a berserker ring, a strength amulet, that kind of thing are boosting your max hit. So how do you use this thing? Like if I'm gonna use this thing, what am I doing? Before we get into the video today, let's talk about the sponsor of the video, Boot.dev. Boot.dev helps you master the back end of coding from Python and Go programming languages, all while learning online and in the comfort of not being crammed into a classroom. Programmers, IT, and other computer tech jobs are in high demand, and they make really good money, upwards of $100K a year, and Boot.dev can help you get your foot in the door. They use modern game design to push you towards your goal and dive into hands-on learning without getting so bored that you just click off. Level up, collect achievements, and climb up the leaderboards. They also have an active Discord community if you need any help or questions. On top of that, they offer a 30-day no questions asked refund policy. I can't wait to try this out myself in my free time. Maybe it will give me some insight into OSRS spaghetti code. I hope to see you guys there learning alongside me. Go to boot.dev and use my code Gnomonkey to get 25% off your entire first year if you choose the annual plan. You are wearing strength gear, good strength gear that doesn't have a ton of negative ranged, and you're going to be praying your ranged prayer. So for some reason, instead of piety, you use the ranged prayer, and you're just trying to maximize your strength bonus with this kind of thing. What's really cool about this is the other thing that Eclipse drops is Eclipse armor. So this set here, in that it has strength bonus, you see 3 on the helmet, 3 on the chest, 1 on the legs. It has strength bonus, and it has ranged accuracy, a decent amount. It's not crazy, it's kind of similar to Carol's. I think it's slightly worse accuracy than Carol's. But when you're wearing this full set, you get this set effect, which has this sick, like, sun effect over your head when it procs. This has a 20% chance that when you hit somebody, it doesn't work on zeros, a 20% chance when you hit somebody that it's going to do this cool sun effect, and it will proc 1 burn damage. And that doesn't sound very good. You're like, what does that even do? And I didn't know what it did for a long time until I looked into it. So that 1 burn damage means 1 in 5 hits, you're getting an extra 10 damage. Okay? Because this burn proc happens 10 times. When you have this full set on and you're throwing darts at things, it has up to an added 1.1 DPS, assuming you are fully accurate, you can't miss. Because it doesn't work on a miss. So the more you miss, the less good it is. 1.1 DPS is very close to 2 thralls. It's a little bit under 2 thralls worth of DPS. And we all know that thralls are very strong. If you don't know that thralls are very strong, you should know that. Also, the potion you're going to be using is not ranging pots, although that will boost the accuracy. So that's kind of like drinking a super attack for this. What you're drinking is super strength potions. That's how you're getting damage out of this thing. There's a lot of weird stuff going on, a lot of misinformation, and there's also the added issue of this set effect is not in any of the calculators. As far as I know Gearscape will not show this correctly in the calcs, and I don't believe the wiki's DPS calc has it either. So neither of these show this added burn damage. This added burn damage is what takes it to the next level. If you are wearing this full set, Atlatl rips. It destroys. So what I'm going to be doing today is comparing the Atlatl to Bofa, which I think is its closest parallel. Atlatl's main use, effectively, is on kind of lower defense targets, okay? But it will go through that defense a bit better than a blowpipe would, right? So it's kind of in between these weapons. So it's better on lower defense targets, but it can still kind of get through defense. And it has a low range. So if something's really, really far away, you're going to need the Bofa. And there's a lot of cases where you still need that Bofa. But Atlatl, basically, it's going to be about 5% worse than a Bofa typically. So anywhere that you're using a Bofa, if you're using the Eclipse set, it's going to be fairly close. The other benefit is that strength levels are a lot easier to get than range levels. And obviously, like, you can chin range, and that's pretty good, but it requires Monkey Madness 2 to do it, like, effectively. That's not an easy quest to get done, not early. So there's certain stages in an account where your strength level, if you're training on Nagas, which are insane strength XP. If you haven't seen that video, you probably want to watch it. I have a guide on this. Training strength is very easy, and getting a high strength level is a lot easier than getting a high range level. So in a lot of cases, Atlatl is going to be beating Bofa, depending on your account progression. The other main thing is, remember how I was saying you kind of wear weird gear with the Atlatl? I have this in Calc here. You're wearing strength ranged hybrid gear a lot of the time, or things that just boost strength. So things like a Berserker Ring are boosting your Atlatl. And using things like an Anguish with an Atlatl are not helpful, right? So what's actually a really good amulet is this Strength Amulet. And you're never thinking about this. A lot of people don't know Strength Amulet has the same strength bonus as a Torture. It's 10. It's 10 strength bonus. So this thing's actually really, really nasty. Obviously, you're not getting any accuracy. Low defense monsters, it really shines. But you're getting 10 strength bonus out of this amulet that costs 2k. It's freaking crazy. You don't need that Anguish. Anguish is kind of expensive. But we look at this, what's great about Gearscape is it actually shows the cost of these two setups. Atlatl set is 11 mil. Bofa's 240 mil. Like, that's a slight... Now, obviously, a big chunk of this, and a big reason this costs so much, a big reason Bofa is so expensive is that it requires crystal armor to be used. And crystal armor is kind of expensive. If you don't know, I've seen a lot of people make the mistake of using Bofa with some weird stats. You'll have to have crystal armor for it to be any good. You gain a huge amount of damage and accuracy from the crystal armor. You have to have it. So this whole set is very expensive. Bofa on its own is 160 mil. But Atlatl is juiced off of strength bonus gear, and strength bonus gear is not expensive. Barrow's gloves, mixed hide boots, Berserker Ring, strength amulet. Like, this is all fairly cheap. And the Eclipse set as well. The helmet is under $1 mil. It's crazy. I saw that. I was like, what? All the pieces are under 1.3 mil. That's crazy. When you're comparing it to Bofa, where like the helmet even is 8.5 mil. This helmet costs more than the whole Eclipse set times like 2. What's sick is the Atlatl actually is going to compete with Bofa most of the time. Depending on your stats, depending on where you're at, it's going to be at least close to Bofa. Okay? The other really cool thing about Atlatl, besides it just being so freaking cheap, is that in raids, the amount of switches you bring kind of it reduces the amount of supplies you can bring. Typically, reducing the amount of switches you need is a really good thing. What's awesome about Atlatl is its melee gear. So that means maybe you skimp out on your melee gear a little bit. You're not bringing the full bandos. You just bring Eclipse as your melee gear. It's only a little bit worse. It's slightly worse strength than bandos. You're wearing the B-ring already. You're typically camping a B-ring in every raid because strength bonus matters a lot out of this ring slot. Barrow's gloves, you can use those as hybrid for both melee and ranged. Sweet. Mixed hide boots, you can use those hybrid, melee, or ranged. If you wanted to swap these for dragon boots or prims, also really good. And those are not super expensive. Prims are kind of, but dragon boots are very cheap. My melee switch in Calcs using this setup is 2 items, maybe 3 if I'm using a defender. I'm going to put on my Inferno cape and I'm going to put on my weapon. And now I'm in melee gear. So not only does that make it super easy to do the switch, you also can just bring a ton more supplies into raids. So places like ToA, places like Calcs, this really, really shines, this armor set. It's super, super good. Very, very underrated. Other thing to mention is everybody hates Red Prison on an Iron, okay? I'm trying to make this more towards both types of accounts because I think Atlatl is super underrated for both, but it's been seen as more of an Iron Man weapon because nobody likes going to Red Prison on an Iron. It takes a long, long time to get Bofa. We all know that. It's an average of 400 KC. You have to do at CG to get the set. Eclipse set? Moons is extremely easy to kill. It's not completely free, but compared to CG, it's like very, very easy. And the time to get this is dramatically lower. It's far less KC to get full Eclipse. Even just getting the Atlatl is going to take you a long way on an Iron. But if you can get full Eclipse, it's going to take you way less long to get that than Bofa. And it's also going to be very similar. I have my stats in here just kind of as a reference because, you know, I have okay ranged, but I have a little bit higher strength. I think this is fairly typical for a lot of earlier accounts. Okay, I'm going to run through some calcs and some basic like situations. I'm going to see Atlatl versus Bofa. I have it with my hardcore stats and I have it with max stats. So we'll just see like the difference here between these two weapons. This DPS, it looks far worse like typically because what Gearscape is not doing is adding that burn damage. The burn damage is a massive amount of damage. When you're trying to check for burn damage, what you do, get a breakdown of the monster, see what your accuracy is with the Atlatl. Okay, so in this case it's 51.72. All you do is take, bear with me, we're doing some numbers, we're crunching. 10/9, okay, which is 1.1 repeating. Okay, I said it, repeating. Okay, it's not too bad, I promise, we're almost there. Multiply that by the accuracy, 0.517, okay? And hit enter, boom, 0.5744. This is what you're adding to your DPS. So that's how much extra DPS you're getting out of the Atlatl's burn. You follow? I probably lost half of you. Sorry. It's not too bad though. This is very, very easy to plug in. Okay. So when you see this 4.6, go ahead and add 0.57 to it. Let's throw in the typical 20 BGS because typically that's what we're going to be going for, or Bone Dagger. Either way, both good on Iron or whatever you're doing. Bone Dagger works the same way. And let's see it without. So let's check everything in ToA that you would typically be ranging, right? So let's see the difference here. Okay. We have the Atlatl's DPS 5.69 versus 6.81. That's a 16% difference. Okay. Let's add the burn damage. All right, 0.6394, 0.71. We're going to add that to 5.69. Okay, so 6.8 versus 6.4, and that gives us a DPS difference of 6%. So like I said, it's typically going to be around 5 to 10% better, your Bofa. A lot of people gate themselves out of raids because they don't have a Bofa yet. They're like, oh, you know what? You just need that thing. You just can't get in there. It's good, but you don't need it. Atlatl's kind of crazy. It's very, very close. You can get pretty far with an Atlatl. If I plug in Fury, let's see if this is better. Sometimes you want to be checking Fury versus Strength. Fury is 8 Strength instead of 10, but it has a lot of accuracy. So it's something that's kind of tanky like Zebak. Let's see if a Fury is better. It is 5.82. Let's do it one more time. We got 0.727. We're going to add that to 5.83, rounding up. Okay, 6.81. 6.82 over 6.56 is a 4% difference. A 4% difference if you're wearing a Fury. That's pretty marginal. That's very, very close. Considering one of these costs 20 times more. Yeah, no big deal. Just 20 times more. Let's keep going because, fun fact, burn actually works properly on basically everything in ToA, including P2, which is kind of interesting. Like, P2 is kind of weird, but burn still works totally fine. Let's check the obelisk. Let's assume you grab 30 BGS damage. I doubt you're going to hit the full cap every time, but I feel like this is a fair average to expect. Okay, already these are fairly close. Let's do the Fury check, which is better, Strength or Fury. It's looking like a Fury. You'll see a Strength enemy. It's actually really, really close a lot of the time. So let's take a peek at that. Okay, we have 6.9 versus 6.71. I think this is going to be close. We have a 2.8% difference in DPS. I mean, that's pretty close. Those are fairly similar, man. I'm going to quick run back through the calcs with max stats as well, because obviously this is showing a lot better how Atlatl is. If you have more strength and range, Atlatl is going to be closer to Bofa. We'll check it again with max stats. Let's go ahead and check P2. Okay, we get 564. We're going to add that to 4.5. 5.09 versus 5.99. Looks like Bofa shines a little better at P2. Let's see. Because you can't BGS it. Okay. Bofa's a lot better on P2. You're looking at a 17% difference. Still usable, though. Let's check it on P3. I'm going to assume you're getting some nasty BGS, because a double BGS is typically quite good. Let's say 45. 6351, and we get 0.705. We're going to add that to 5.66. We get 6.36 versus 6.7. Let's see the difference. 6.71 over 6.37. 5%. 5.3% difference. Okay, not bad, not bad. So again, like typically 5 to 10%. It especially helps if you can drain things defense first with either a Bone Dagger, BGS, Warhammer. Warhammer's quite good early in ToA as well. You'd be surprised. So you can see the thing is not bad at all in ToA. Let's quick run through for max stats. Okay, I'm getting 6.4. We're going to add that to 5.643. Sure. Okay, 7.557 over 6.29. So you can see this is a way bigger gap, 20%. So again, it's based on like your stats and your progression of the account, right? Later on in the account, as you get better and better stats, Bofa starts to overtake more and more. Actually didn't do it with BGS. Let's do it one more time. You can probably cut this, Hedron. Unlucky. Okay, I'm getting 7.44. We're going to take 8.24 over 7.44. We're getting a difference of 10%. Okay, bigger gap here. It's falling in line with the 5 to 10% difference, roughly. The better your stats get, the more difference you're going to have in Bofa to Atlatl. So, like I'm saying, Atlatl is kind of an earlier choice and a cheap choice, which makes it helpful. Quick P1, again on P1, about a 10% difference. So it looks like that's going to be similar across the board, about 10%. P2 is going to be a bigger gap. I'm not sure that Gearscape is accurately doing the P2 calcs anyways. I think it's just doing it based off the stats. But yeah, you get the idea. At max stats, it's going to be about a 10% difference. Pretty solid considering Atlatl enables you to bring even more potions into the raid and also is dramatically cheaper. Let's quickly take a look through chambers. By the way I'm doing this, Gearscape typically has monsters as a choice, but if you do groups, you have a bunch of options in here for different raids and stuff like this, like big groups of monsters, so you can do everything at once. Kind of nice. All right, let's take a peek at the good old shamans. An important thing to remember as well with Bofa is obviously it has 10 tile range versus 6 tile. It's going to be way easier to, not to mention that Bofa is slower, right? So that just makes it easier to use Bofa in general for anything. So obviously like killing things with a Bofa that require like specific movement, like shamans, like a Bofa is going to be way easier. And you can also safe spot with it. That's kind of nice. On paper DPS, we have 8.99 over 8.99. 7.73. So that Bofa is going to be 3% better. Whoop-de-doo. Now, Vespula Portal, really good example of that range mattering a lot. You can't even reach it with an Atlatl. You literally just can't use that there. So that sucks. This is where Bofa is really good. This is one of Bofa's best uses in the entire game, honestly. Bofa used to be Biss for like quite a while on Vest Portal. Let's check Vasa. Really, really underrated on Vasa is a quick hammer spec. It's actually really, really good. Let's check it without. Oh no, does Gearscape think a hammer doesn't work? You can't do this to me. What? I'm getting me mallet. Doesn't let me plug it in, dude. All right, we'll calc it anyways. We have 8.54 over 7.97, and we get a 7% difference. If this showed the hammer drain reduction here, it would be even better. But a lot of people think hammer doesn't work on Vasa because it didn't used to work. He would rapidly regen as he healed. But ever since the QOL changes where he heals like in one chunk at once, he does not get defense back until he goes for the second bomb on you. You can actually drain Vasa. And let's check the one everybody cares about, Olm Head. Now, really obviously, Olm Head is going to be a lot harder to do with an Atlatl. There is a method. You take a lot more damage and it's just a lot more awkward, but you can still use it. I do that all the time in my streams. Okay, we're getting a difference of 8%. Okay, 8% with max stats. It's not bad at all. It's not bad at all. Important thing to keep in mind is if there's a case where Atlatl's burn doesn't kick in. So there's a lot of things in the game that are immune to burn or purge burn for whatever reason. So Olm Head is not an example of this, but there are cases like Vasa, for example. If we go back to that, I just added the burn damage to that, right? But that's not really fair because Vasa, when he gets to the crystal, gets rid of that burn. So clearly Bofa was like way better in that case. So it's something to keep in mind. Does burn actually work on this target, right? Is that fair to say that Atlatl's at its full advantage here? Another good example is Zulrah, and we'll calc Zulrah in a second. Zulrah, whenever she goes underwater, you lose that burn damage. It's gone. It's something to keep in mind. Can you actually add that burn damage or not? But we can see in raids it's doing generally well, usually within 5 to 10%. Another one that everybody always tells me you have to have a Bofa for Zulrah. That's where it really kills. We can see like Atlatl is, you know, it's a chunk behind. That's 14% worse. You will get a little bit of burn damage, but not the full burn damage. I would say it's maybe 20% effective at Zulrah. It'll get a couple hits off and then she'll go underwater. So you're getting maybe a fifth of the burn damage, but that's still a little bit of added damage. It's maybe closer to around 12% worse. It's not amazing, but considering it costs, you know, 12 mils, it's not bad. Surprisingly decent. It definitely does well enough at Zulrah. And considering you're using Mage another half of the time, if you don't have a Bofa, you definitely can still go kill Zulrah with this. It's not bad. Muzpa's another one that I was curious about because I know of Muzpa being like quite tanky. And I can tell looking at this, it looks like it's roughly 10% worse with max stats. I want to see it with the lower stats here. Okay, so lower stats, got my stuff in. It's a little closer now. Let's see what it comes out to. So 5.59 over 5.40, that is a 3.5% difference. That's actually really, really close. I'm not sure if every time Muzpa phases, it clears the burn. I'm actually not 100% on that. Probably whenever she does a special, it's going to clear, at least. So you're probably not getting that full damage out, but it's closer than I thought it would be. Definitely not bad. Okay, we got a Tormented Demon up. We got a Blowpipe. We got Adamant Darts in there. On paper, Atlatl just barely beats it, which is crazy, even before burn damage. But throwing in the burn damage, and I don't even have to do any numbers, you can't miss, so that means it's 1.1. Added to 6.49? 7.59 over 6.43. 18% better. It's not bad. That's not to mention that this Atlatl, when you aren't 100% accurate, if I pull that up, it's doing way better because it can punch through defense a lot better than the Blowpipe can. Like, it is quite a bit more accurate. You can see 41% versus 35. That's a big difference. Let's start adding better darts. What do you need to make this thing better? Rune darts. That's still going to be worse because, remember, I had 7.59. So 7.59 over 7.07. That's 7% worse. All right, let's keep going. Amethyst darts, does that get us there? Nope, because that doesn't get a max hit. So those will be equal. Dragon darts, 7.73. I think that is, yep, that is just barely going to be winning. 7.73 over 7.59. 1.8% better to be using Dragon Darts against the Tormented Demons. And even then, I would say it's not better because there's a chunk of the fight where you're not guaranteed to hit. And if we look at the difference there, this is slightly worse, but then you add the burn damage, it's going to be over 3. It's going to be a lot better when they're shielded. So this is actually just going to win overall for the fight, which is kind of just crazy. It's beating a Blowpipe with Dragon Darts on the thing that you're guaranteed to hit. It's crazy. It's actually wild. Okay, so basically, Atlatl, incredibly good early. Incredibly good early for both mains and irons. The thing is disgusting. Obviously, Bofa's still got some uses. I'll go over those a second. Bofa is still going to be necessary for a lot of things. The Vest Portal was an obvious one that we just talked about. Zuck is another obvious one. You actually can hit Zuck in the middle with Atlatl. It just barely will reach him. A blowpipe on long range for specs works too, by the way. You can do that in your runs, just saying. But like trying to use Atlatl against the sets, like it's going to drag you out constantly. You're going to get killed. I've done Zuck with Atlatl, but you know, Bofa is just tremendously better. It's tremendously better for Inferno, like no question. If you're going for a first cape, Bofa is just, you need that. Trying to do a first cape with anything else, it's going to be almost impossible. So I would say Bofa's most important use case is Inferno, right? But waiting to do Inferno until you have this cash lying around, it's a little more feasible. Another obvious one people will always bring up is God Wars. God Wars, God Wars, God Wars. Bofa's better. And it is. You can't use an Atlatl for God Wars. It's not going to work. But Scobo got added. That annihilates every other weapon at Zammy. So Zammy's off the table. You're just going to use the Scobo there. Like, Scobo's tremendously better. The other three bosses, I would argue, don't matter too much to grind early. And people are going to say Bandos, but you need to kill Bandos. Not really. BGS is great. I'm not going to say BGS is not good. But as you're getting into raids, what matters more is a hammer, typically. Bando's armor is a thing people still think is really important, but Blood Moon has the same strength bonus, okay? And obviously Blood Moon has slightly worse defense, but Blood Moon is, for all intents and purposes, the same as Bandos. Go kill more of the guys you killed to get this thing. You know, like you can just kind of skip that. Sarah for Armadillo Crossbow eventually will be a thing you want, but not super early. It's not super important early. Sarah Godsword, you don't have to get that super early either. Armadillo just has nothing that's relevant until you get Masori. Like there's nothing in Armadillo that really matters. You know, Bofa's good, but the places where it's good, you don't have to be doing early. Two more things to mention for Bofa. Bofa's exceptionally good on Mystics. I believe it was around like 20% better than Atlatl or something on Mystics. This thing struggles against Mystics, okay? In Chambers, if you're killing Mystics, Bofa's a lot better. So that's a really good use. Vesp, Portal, and Mystics are where Bofa destroys in Chambers. The rest, Atlatl's almost the same. Other thing is Leviathan. Okay, the last little bit of Leviathan, Bofa is going to beat a crossbow, but just camping a crossbow is plenty good on Leviathan. That's going to be very solid as well. Like, obviously, this would be a little bit better. It'll speed up your Leviathan grind a bit, but crossbow is going to be plenty good for most of that fight, especially with the new-ish crossbow weakness Leviathan has. Like, crossbow just annihilates him. Do you need to go to Red Prison immediately on your Iron Man to get a Bofa these days? Like, you got to get there as fast as possible. You got to get that thing because it just kills No, actually, you don't really. I mean, it's good. Like, eventually, you probably want to pick it up. You know what? Honestly, this thing earlier might even be better in a lot of cases. So, like, it's not bad. Do you need a Bofa on your main to go get into raiding? Can you not touch that ToA thing until you have saved up around 250 mil for your range? No. No, you can actually go in and do ToA with an Atlatl. You can go in and do Chambers with an Atlatl. You'd be surprised. It's not bad. A really common argument I've seen for Bofa as well on Irons is like, well, you got to go there to get the GP. And the GP from CG is really, really good. But there's also just like a lot of ways of curbing that these days. And you don't need like horrendous amounts of GP on an Iron. It's nice to have, but they've just added Giants, which when you do your Giants grind, that's going to be a chunk of like 5 mil GP going for all the items there. You want almost all the items from Giants, so doing those until, yeah, it's going to get you 4 to 6 mil, something like that. Doing Muzpa, don't actually need a Bofa for it. Muzpa gives you a lot of GP. Vorkath gives a lot of GP. If you have Hydra unlocked, it gives a lot of GP. If you're able to do Colosseum, that gives a ridiculous amount of GP. Colosseum's actually way more GP than CG is. And also, if you're not a hardcore and you're capable of killing Revenants, oh my goodness, that's a lot of gold. They drop ridiculous amounts of GP. So, like, yes, CG's great for those things. Dragon Arrows as well are excellent drops. But, like, there's ways of getting around the need to do it early. A big quitting point is getting Bofa for Irons. And I think it's really nice now that you have some options for at least putting it off for a while, right? You don't have to go get that thing immediately. And for mains, it's kind of the same thing. This setup costs are so little. It costs so little, and people avoid getting into raids because they're like, oh, I don't have enough GP. I can't go do things. Yes, you can. The Fang is so cheap. This setup is so cheap. You can get a raid setup going for like 50 mil. It's crazy. It's very, very easy. You can start doing ToA with very little stuff. Chambers as well. Like the requirements to get into Chambers, if you do team Chambers, it's not particularly super hard. And also the setup you need to get into it is not super expensive. Same kind of deal. I've always been you gotta train your stats to max before you do any content, and that's not really what I've been saying. I've been saying it's good to just max them. Like, people are like, do you need X amount of stats for things? The answer is the higher your stats are, the better it is, right? There's no cutoff. There's no strict cutoff for doing any content. The higher your stats are, the easier it's gonna be, and stats matter a lot. You know, realistically, if you work a lot and like you don't got that 99 strength yet, I mean, you can still go do raids. You can. You're not gated out of anything. When I say you should train your combat stats, it's less me gating you out of content to have max stats and more so me saying there is no strict cutoff. Train your stats whenever you can, right? You dig? All right, I think that's it for the video. I just really, really wanted to show this to people. I think a lot of people don't know about that burn effect. It's way closer to Bofa than a lot of people know, I think. So this thing is disgusting. I think it's a joke that the setup costs about 6 mil. That's crazy. That is criminal. I'd say this set is equally useful to like full Blood Moon, and Blood Moon is quite expensive. So yeah, hopefully this helped some of you. Leave a like if you liked it and or subscribe. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Bye. Mwah!